Welcome to part 2 of our review of Parshat Vayigash Tafshin Ayin Vav. And post-Meir, we usually have a little brief review of the review. It sounds like a name of a good song. So, let's start again. We spoke about the disappointment in the time in which Hanukkah seems to disappear into the very same things that got it all going in the first place, in the types of arguments, breakdown between the Hashmonaim themselves, invading in Rome, the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, the issues that get us back to problems with Yovan just a few days after Hanukkah, in the 3-day fast, Chet, which begins today, or began today, it's already, we're on the second day, and it began today, it ends with Asar B'Teves, and the destruction of Beis HaMikdash, and the Ramazim to the death of Ezra and Nehemiah, the builders of the Beis HaMikdash. Break down the relationship all the way back, from the beginning through the end. And that we found was reflected directly in our Parsha itself, which has, instead of the expected setup that we had with the cliffhanger at the end of last week's Parsha, that led us to expect a resolution very, very strongly. It's actually a modern technique very much in both music and literature to do that, which is to set up expectations. Susan Langer has a whole book in Yeshua. Yeah, so it's to set up expectations for a certain type of resolution, and then specifically, because the resolution doesn't come, to elicit a very strong response. And that's why very often the modern music has in it a tremendous amount of this dissonance that comes after it leads you to expect something. That's very much what you have over here. An immense feeling of dissonance, of the results of the events actually turning out almost the opposite, in which instead of Yosef having achieved his longed for moment of connection with his brothers, in which they recognized that everything that they had thought about him was wrong, instead all that happens is that he elicits an even deeper response and analysis of his motives by Yehuda that causes him to have to belittle himself into saying that he was merely libechya, shalachani Elohim lefanecha, in which he has to allow Yaakov Avinu to send him Yehuda lahorot, in which all of his plans are frustrated by the brothers' activities with Paro and their attempt to set up alternative channels to Paro, in which they ignore him, in which his longed-for relationship with Yaakov turns out to be something that takes place only 1 or 2 times, in which he sees his father, and many of the other issues in which afterwards the brothers suspect him, and they're afraid maybe he's going to kill them, and that the only real feelings that he had for them was because he didn't want his father to be angry, and I mean, just crazy things that we would not expect to go through not only this week's Parsha, but next week's Parsha as well. And then the open issues that continue on throughout the Parsha, in which the weird joke on Yosef about his insistence about what an emergency this is, and the whole international crisis of the food, which suddenly comes to an end because of some, throw out line by Yaakov Avinu to Paro about, the Nilas will come and come up to you, and it's absolutely amazing. And then we have the overall question of how it's possible that every moment of buildup, from the moment that Yaakov Avinu left originally from Beersheba to go to Padan Aram, where all that he dreamt of was the achievement of Yerusha Zoretz, in which he had made his promise and his shvua, and he was never mekayim that shvua, and was going to get back to Beit El, basically ends up with his real life in Eretz Mitzrayim, the least expected resolution of all of the events in the Chumash. And we went on from there to note that there were indeed some absolutely amazing changes over here that do provide a tikkun l'deres, which we traced from the Arvus of Yehuda, which became the understanding that it was he who was nafsho k'shura b'nafsho, which ends up creating the relationship between Yehuda and Binyamin that actually leads to the Binyan of the Beis Hamikdash itself. And not only to the Binyan of the Beis Hamikdash, which includes Levi through all of the tikkunim that Yosef provided in advance, but actually creates the country. It's not simply the mokum of the Mikdash, but as we know, Yehuda, qua Yehuda is not Yehuda. Yehuda is Yehuda, Binyamin, and Levi. And essentially, Klal Yisrael, as we know it today, is comprised of those components, and only those components which initially reach this tikkun at the beginning of the parsha, which becomes a tikkun l'daris, and in the inverse, the interrelationship that we find later on in the Gemara between Rabbi Yossi and Rav, and Sinai, and the difference between Toch and Harim, and where Rabbi Yossi actually connects it to these events. It was the same 22 years. He says, Rav Tvoot, B'koach Shor, then his turnaround into the amazing fact that David HaMelech considers Mephibosheth to be his Rebbe, which of course that was the result of this is not Mephibosheth ben Yonatan, as Tosfos points out, this is Mephibosheth ben Shaul directly. It's called Ishbosheth, and that he says everything that I do is only al daito Mephibosheth Rabbi. So everything that I do is checked against that makor of Mishnah, which derives from the Koach Shor of Yosef himself. So that the unbelievable interrelationships that Vayigash teaches us are the relationship between the Yosef, Yehuda, Binyamin, and whatever takes place later, ends up becoming a modality in the parsha as a whole, in which we find suddenly that Yosef is a profound friend to Paro, and Paro understands him deeply. That as opposed to what we initially thought of his trying to get something out of Paro, with Paro who had taken full responsibility for everything that was being given to the brothers and the entire future, to the point where, astoundingly, Paro himself predicts Kol Tu Veretz Mitzrayim. And as Rashi says, Niba v'lo yada masha niba. He didn't even realize what he was saying, or did he? That in the end, you're going to turn the Mitzrayim into a Mitzula Shein Badagim. Everything is going to be yours. And in fact, that relationship is so profound that the moment that Yosef was gone, and the moment that there was no longer a continuation of the Anhag of Yosef, Paro was a different man. Vayakol Melech Chadash. According to Woman Diomer, it's the same Paro, but it's unrecognizable because Asher Lo Yadat Yosef. We generally take it to mean who made himself Asher Lo Yadat Yosef. Now, with this understanding by Yasimeni, Avlo Paro means Chaveru Patron, the loss of Yosef meant the loss of his own personality, which is amazing. Same thing happens later with Nebuchadnezzar and Daniel in almost a takeoff on this story, in which the words that are used are the same, to the point that Rashi has to analyze it. More analyzes the difference between the Titpaim and the Tipaim, and what was the difference between the Chalamot. And in the same way that there was this deep relationship with Paro, there was this deep relationship with Daniel, maybe even deeper. And Daniel as well was found giving aces to Nebuchadnezzar of all people. So these people that are monsters to the world are the closest friends. We know that the entire story begins here with the twinning effect, in which, as Rav Shimon bar Yochai points out, yes, everybody knows about the hatred of Esav and Yaakov, but at that moment, he kissed him with his whole heart. That there was something about the relationship at the moment of its resolution, in which Achi Elcha Shelach, that there was a true and complete moment in which Rivka's vision of Lama Eshkal Shnechem Yom Echad, in which Rivka's vision of being Ein Yaakov Esav, in which Yaakov's da'aga of maybe something will happen to me was matched precisely by his da'aga Shema Aharog, not only Shema Ahareg, and I don't want to hurt Esav. Amazing things we just take for granted, which of course becomes translated into the entire relationship that Klal Yisrael has with the West. I mean, it's not a small issue. This is perhaps the most stunning element of the development of Yisrael throughout the ages, is this relationship. To such an extent that, and we know that the Gemara in Avodah Zarah tells us about the profound friendship between Antoninus, Caesar, and Rebbe, to the point where Antoninus begged him to allow him to serve as a stepping stool for him. I would do anything for you. If only you would allow me to be mishamish. And Rebbe was mitnaged because he felt it was a bizayon from the Nesias of Antoninus and so on. And then the insights that they provided each other, which Rebbe would actually quote Antoninus, which they had this tunnel running between them. I mean, it's an unbelievable vision, to the point where Antoninus dies. So Rebbe says, Nitparda Chavila. And the same thing happens in a later generation with Rav. Rav is very, very close with Adar Khan, also very high up in the government. When he dies, Yishachiv, Amar Rav Nitparda Chavila. You want to hear what Rashi says about Nitparda Chavila? I'll bet you do. Rashi says Nitparda Chavila means Ahavatenu shnikshara nefesh benefesh. Exactly the same words. So the nafsho kshara benafsho is expanded now to include not only the relationships within the parsha, but shed light on everything that's going back in terms of all of our interconnections with the very people that you thought were the end, and that was the Ema Chashecha Gedola, that somehow we're gonna make our way through and be able to come out of this alive. My gosh, that's absolutely unbelievable. Okay, and the next part, the Yaakov relationship. What do we really think happened over there? That Yaakov gives him a throwaway line? This is no throwaway line, because this Nikuda, as we've pointed out before, of the Mayim Olim Mikrosai, is a fundamental Havdalah between Yisrael and the Yumas. It's the way that you distinguish. Avram Avinu, Yitzchak, Lagabi the Be'erais, who is the real owner of the Be'er? And the idea of Be'er Shal Miriam, and the way that this is the whole schus that Yisrael has with Mayim, goes all the way back to the Shittim and Ruach HaKodesh, and the way in which the whole purpose of Adam is in terms of Mayim, and the Chameshes Shir Amal. I said, this is crazy. A throwaway line to Paro. Oh, if you've got a problem, the Neelahs could always come up to greet you. And then why does Rashi say it's the bracha that is given by everybody to the Circuit Kolanim? It says he even uses the French word for what, this is what's always done. This is what's always done. You changed the whole history of the world. Yeah, this is what's always done. It's a very strange story. And we were wondering, what in the world is this business about birthday boy Yaakov? Not to mention Yaakov's insane response, which Chazal say costs him all of those years of his life that he didn't reach the age of Yitzchak because of the number of words that he uses to say how horrible his life was. And it says, Kama Yidei Shnei Chayecha. Oi, I ain't gonna tell you. Actually, I'm a youngster, but what a miserable life I'm having. He's asking you a question, give him an answer every 6 what he's asking. This is an old kvetch. The Paro asks how old you are, start kvetching about my life. I mean, it's what a bizayon. How is such a thing possible? I mean, obviously, there's something there that we're missing in the whole amazing interaction. So it's clear there too. And it's amazing diak from Rav Mordechai Breuer points out. There are 2 inexplicable meetings in the parsha that are described by an extra pasuk that doesn't belong there, Bichlal, in the story, not in the parsha. When Paro takes Yosef, right? So Yosef tells him the dream. Paro says, Ein navon v'chacham kamocha. It's an amazing thing. And he says to everybody, Animtza kazeh ish asher ruach Elohim bo. And therefore, Atati al beiti b'picha isha kol ani, vayomer Paro Yosef, re'ei natati otcha kol eretz Mitzrayim. and he takes off the batam al yado, and he puts it on Yad Yosef. Vayarkev oto b'merkevet hamishna shelo, and vayomer paro ani paro b'ladecha lo yorim ish et yado v'traglo b'chol eretz Mitzrayim, and then he gets him married to Osnat bat Potifera. Vayetzei Yosef al eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, that should be the end of the introduction. Comes along another pasuk. Oh, V'Yosef ben 30 shana b'amdo lifnei paro melech Mitzrayim. Vayetzei Yosef b'lifnei paro v'yavor b'chol eretz Mitzrayim. You just said that. I mean, if you're editing, can't you just stick that in before? What in the world is that? Exactly the same thing happens at the end, except that there's a difference of 100 years. And that's the 30 years plus 100, Shloshimu Me'at Shana, which is repeated in the end of Vayigash, in which he's Mavorech et Paro. And, Paro brings him in over here. Let's get the pasuk. And takes him in. And they come to Paro, and then Vayatei Yosef et Yaakov Aviv. Fine. Vayavorech Yaakov et Paro. Okay. Vayomer Paro Yaakov Kami Yemei Shnei Chayecha. Vayomer Yaakov Yemei Shnei Vayavorech Yaakov et Paro. Vayetzei milifnei Paro. So we have the repeat of this din of the bracha, in which there's a introduction of how old you are. The only thing is that it's 100 years difference, which means that the way that we ought to understand this is as part of the relationship to Yosef himself. In other words, Paro is looking at the implications of a Yosef 100 years later, essentially. Okay? So Yaakov walks in and he gets the sense of all of the shorashim and the patriarchal presence, which must have been insanely powerful. And Yaakov Avinu, my God, Shufrei Me'inot Marisha, and so on and so forth. Okay, so he says to him, what does it take to get that kind of presence? This is like, you really are a patriarch. Yaakov says, you're totally wrong. I'm a kid. But you know what? I'm a boxer. And I carry the reminder of every blow that laid me low to cry out. And that's what you're looking at. There's a completely different relationship. You don't say that to someone unless that someone can appreciate what he's looking at. In other words, what you are looking at is a human being who fought for everything that you see. You want to see a patriarch? That's a patriarch. What you're looking at over here is an amazing achievement of a human being. It's open to humanity. And this is the power that Yaakov had for Paro. Not the person up in the air, but the fact that he could relate to him as he would have related to a Yosef that had gone through 100 years more. And we'll see why this is so important as we go on in the parsha. But that means that the relationship to Yaakov was also profoundly personal. Obviously, you can't share this unless you immediately sense that the question that he was asking of Kam Yemei Shnei Chayecha, it's crazy. You wouldn't have done such a thing. Yaakov Avinu is going to do such a thing. It can only be a response to a very intimate sense of admiration and wanting to understand you, which meant that he felt that giving this over would provide Paro with a connection, which was the bracha. The bracha that Yaakov Avinu gave to him was, as Rashi says, it's a standard bracha. But from that moment on, Paro was mechuber to such an extent that the Nilus was Oila L'Krasa. Look, I can't give that to you. Obviously, I can't give that to you. Give that to you. That's something that you either have or you don't have. So it means that Paro, in meeting this way with Yaakov Avinu, was able to actually take on those elements of what the Kayach of Yisrael was, and the Nilus actually was Oila L'Krasa. My God, that's amazing. From both sides of the fence. You're talking about Chaverut, in terms of Patron, Chaver, and Av. This is literally Av LeParo. So this is an amazing moment. Now, we saw that this can only be achieved. What it was that you had achieved was an achievement that touches on the depths of the nature of tshuva. It's of tshuva. It's the moment of pure hodah in which somebody can actually take on the arvus of something that he had fought his entire life for. And it's an amazing moment, which is why it has the power not only of building the Beit HaMikdash, not only of building Medinat Yehuda, but also really of Migaram L'Ruvein L'Hodot. It was Yehuda. Whatever was chaser in the Horah of Yehuda, which we find that because of this arvus, and because it came from his own reluctance originally to be able to accept the relationship, the arvus was despite it, that because of it, there was actually chal on him as a klala that he'd given himself. And it was only Moshe Rabbeinu that was able to be misaking that by being mispal on each point. And the El Amo Yivienu is to give it back Hora'ah in the Shammai. Because Lo Haya Yochol Lechaven L'Fim Hilchas. So he was, first he couldn't even fight. He knew Cham Teshel Torah. And in the end, he couldn't, even if he did, he wasn't able to reach the halacha. And in the end, it's the halacha, Kavai the Chol Mocha, and that ends up being the problem with Shaul. And that's the reason that he gets so jealous of David. That was the one thing he couldn't fight, which was the power of the Horah over years. Any element that wasn't Nesukin completely, indeed wasn't Nesukin, it created problems of theirs. Any element that had been worked on, and that worked. And one of the strangest things that we saw about the parsha was the way that it turns Yosef's concern of come quickly, hurry up, you must come immediately. This is into a joke, because in the end, when they come, there never was a wolf. And in the end, he was giving out Ela Kabzera and the Mechaya and plant and everything will be great again. So how in the world could Yosef have said on the one hand, Od Chamesh Shanim, that is not going to be Charish V'Katzir, and then the Pasuk makes a joke out of it? And what's the big rush anyway? No, I mean, what, they can't come down another couple of trips, it'll send them. So the Ramban says, well, maybe it was a political hot potato. I mean, for heaven's sakes, the whole world is coming. What a political hot potato. So next time they'll pay. Do you have to give them their money back in the thing? I mean, I don't understand. Why is it a political hot potato? Well, the rest of the world is not going to be still coming down to Mitzrayim. Okay, but let's say it's a political hot potato, because after all, nobody else had any money and they no longer had any making that. So maybe Mitzrayim would be, it's the Mitveh HaGaz. I mean, what are we going to do with our natural resources? We're going to give it away to these idiots in Canaan? That's it. Okay, maybe. But still, I mean, to say that it's that kind of emergency, we can't have another one or two shipments, maybe, before you come running down with the immediacy of what's going on. And if you take a look, indeed, at the words, when they come back to Yaakov Avinu, and they tell him what it was that they had heard. He says, Maharu, Maharu Alavi, quick. Amarterav, Ko Amarten Chayosef, Samani Elohim Ladon Lachom Mitzrayim, Reday Elai, Al Tamo, don't stand for a moment. Okay, so what happens? Penti Varesh, you're going to go, it's a disaster. Who knows what's going to happen to you? You got it to Leviat Kok. Okay, they go back. Sure enough, I'll be Paro, of course. And they come to Yaakov Avinu, Vayagidu Lo Lemorod Yosef Chai, V'yechiu Moshe B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, and he doesn't believe. Vayofeg Libo, Yilo Emin Leh. Then it says, Vayadabru Elav et kol divrei Yosef asher diber aleihem. So what in the world does that mean? Et kol divrei Yosef asher diber aleihem, which does not apparently include that you Chai and Moshe B'chol Eretz Mitzrayim, which was the first thing he said to them. Tell my father my covenant in Mitzrayim and how everybody, is wild over me and how popular I am. The Medrash goes to great lengths to describe me. So it's really a little bit weird. Is it Divrei Yosef asher diber aleihem, which is Maharu? Don't wait a minute. So that made him believe that it was Yosef. Then he believed it. Vayarat hagalot hashalach shalach Yosef Okay, that I understand was the din of Eglah Rufa, the union of the Levaya that had been bothering Yaakov. But what is the Divrei Yosef? Because it doesn't seem to make sense that this Divrei Yosef were actually the message to come immediately and I'll take care of you and so on. So Mamela, the different Rishonim give different explanations. What part of the Divrei Yosef was it? No. But suppose we take it Kipshute. Then what that would mean is that the only one who understood what Yosef was saying, the same way the only one who understood what Eglah Rufa was about, was Yaakov. What Yosef said did not make sense to anybody else. And initially they didn't say it to Yaakov. And indeed, as the Rishonim say, it wasn't a lashon of kavod to Yaakov, and therefore he didn't say it about Yaakov. He said, you. But you tell your father. He didn't want to say to his father, you will be losing it all and so on. That wasn't kavod. So what did he hear, Yaakov? He must have heard the truth that strikes us as being nutty. In exactly the same way we don't understand the Agalot. What do you mean by Art Agalot? Therefore he believes. Okay, so Chazal tells us something very deep over there that is also definitive of the relationship from all the way back at the beginning. So what was this? What was this Pentivaresh? And why did he say to them that I'm going to be Mekayim you b'toch haaretz? Latet lechem achuzah b'haaretz. If you think about the words Pentivaresh, you will recall that that is exactly the lashon that is used for how it is that Klal Yisrael is supposed to be lo horish et hagoyim. Everybody thinks that means to be yoresh, but no, says Rashi, it means make them poor. So in other words, whoever it is that is shayach to Yerushas Eretz Yisrael has to be morish those who are there and have some kind of achuz b'aretz. Morish in the sense of making poor. Pentivaresh, therefore, astoundingly means
impoverish.
Impoverish, yes.
The relationship of the words. The relationship of the words. Right?
The voracious there, there must be a relationship in the words.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
That's it.
That's what happens with not having an open mouth. Yeah. Impoverish, beautiful. That's beautiful. So what this means is that Yaakov Avinu heard him saying that staying in Eretz Yisrael now will mean that it will damage your achuz in Eretz Yisrael. Coming down to me now will mean that actually you will have a future in Eretz Yisrael and have an achuz of Aretz. And that's what I'm offering you. Nobody else understood that. There's got to be some profound meaning to that. And of course, the other element that is achieved over here is, when you think about it, not just the question of when he was happy, but as his own points out, he never managed to get back to Yitzchak. Oh, yes, he got back to Pachad Yitzchak and all that, but Elohei Yitzchak? This is the first time that he talks about Elohei Yitzchak. This is the first time that he's Zover Zvachim. As the Ramban points out, he's Zover Zvachim to Elohei Zvachim. He never brought Zvachim. Zvachim are Shlomim. Therefore, explains the Ramban, or the Bach, I'll be the Kabbalah, that indeed it was at this moment specifically that he had reached that longed for development during the entire time that he had never gotten back to, and only now was shaykh to be mashlim, which is why he brought Shlomim. The relationships to, this according to the Zohar, is the understanding of the Chazal that is chayav Adam b'kvod aviv, is why isn't it say Avram b'kvod aviv yoter michvod zikno. It's really a remiss to the fact that Tiferes is an outgrowth of Gvura and only a secondary outgrowth of Chesed. So Mela, in bringing Shlomim, he had to be mashlim the midas that came before him. And that is the understanding that for the first time was at that moment that he reached his Madriga. Well, yes, and believe it or not, It was in the same place where originally he had left for Chutz La'aretz. He went back to Beersheba. The first time he had gone to Beersheba was to make sure that he was going to get reshus from the Shekhinah to go out. And this time, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, I am Eloi Avicha. And it's true. I told him not to leave. I'm telling you, yes to leave. This was so central that as far as the Elohei Ziknecha is concerned, it's exactly what Avram Avinu had told Eliezer. B'ni eino chozer l'sham, avo ben b'ni chozer l'sham. So that means that this is part of something that was known all the way from the beginning of the story of the Eitz Amukah Me'emek Hebron, where it was that Yosef had gone from. So clearly, things are very different than we think in terms of the relationship, and perhaps the most striking of all of these crazy things is the fact that when we finally get to the Shemot B'nai Yisrael that are Yordei Mitzrayim, and we're told who it is that Yaakov Avinu collected in order to bring the Elu Shemot B'nai Yisrael Aba'im Mitzrayim, which becomes the opening to Sefer Shemot as well. Who are these children? We go through them all. Yaakov, Ruvanav, Bechor Yaakov, Ruvain, we go through all of these children. And finally we get to the words, Eila ben Eleah shel Yalda Yaakov bipadan Aram. Fine. And then we go through Bnei Gad and so on. Eila b'nei Zilpa asher natan Lavan leLeah bito. And then we also have, of course, the secondary to Rachel of Neidan Chushin, Elo b'nei Bilhah, asher natan Lavan l'Rachel bito. Frankly, I don't give a damn. Why are we going back to that no goodnik? You managed to get away from him. We need to know that he's still being the one that we're, and brilliantly, we have to contrast Rachel. Because when it says Rachel, oh, no, then it doesn't say B'nei Rachel Eshet Yaakov. Nothing about Hashem Natan Lavan. Why? Because he didn't. Because that was the whole story. Yaakov chose Rachel initially directly. And it was Allah Povachamator. So this is the one that everything, this is Eshet Yaakov. That's why it's Eshet Yaakov. The other ones are not called Eshet Yaakov. On the one level, of course, Shnayim Yadali Ishti, which begins the whole story. But on the deeper level, because so long as the relationship is still with love, who remembers says Habanot Benotai V'Kol Asher Ata Roeh Eliyu, and who, of course, is the wonderful, caring father who at the Mitzpah, the Galed, makes him swear, treat my daughters properly or else, any shitano. And we're thinking, what a phony, what an idiot, what a seeker. He was probably going to murder all of them, And the Yesh Bi'adila Sotachem Ra, but this is the same guy that's always interested. And yet, we remember the most amazing puzzle. Vayignov Yaakov et Lev Lavan Arami. Did you know that Lavan had a heart? That Yaakov knew that Lavan had a heart? This guy has a heart? This guy comes out as Bilam Arasha ultimately, and he says, Tiachri Kabon. He's the one who calls the Ovis the Yesharim. That's how we learn how to be Ovis are Yesharim. He's the one that closes the Chumash. Lo kam Yisrael kamo sha'od, avo b'umais kam. Oh, holy cow. The interrelationships that we're talking about over here are just like whatever is involved here is involved with theirs in some type of strange connectedness that takes the entire range of relationships, some of which are metukanim, some of which are kaverut, some of which are kishrei nefesh, and some of which are kishrei leiv, and all of the things that we thought were a matter of getting through it all are fundamentally questions that are reflected within the internal connections of Bnei Yisrael themselves, as is expressed in the story here, specifically of Vayigash. That's not really as surprising as it sounds. Because the reason that it says over here, Ve'elishmot b'nei Yisrael ha'boim Mitzrayim, is something that Moshe Rabbeinu explains. Yatzei gvulot amim v'mispar b'nei Yisrael ha'boim Mitzrayim. That's Rashi. So those that are coming to Mitzrayim, which includes the Tikkun of Levi, which is the one that is Noda Ben Achomot, that ends up becoming central to the entire Hatzalah of Yisrael and the creation of the very Mishkan that in the end is going to be the place where all of that is Yatzei Gvulot Amim. Now, Yatzei Gvulot Amim, first of all, is reflected in the fact that the Shivim that are mentioned over here are the Gvulot Amim that are mentioned back in the Parsha of Nimrod and Migdal Bothel, correct? That is the place where all of those develop, which means that all of them develop in terms of language. It goes all the way back to the argument that Avram Avinu has with Nimrod. Is it Safa Achat Udvorim Achadim? Or is it indeed Shivim Lashon, which is the reason that now we have to have Shivim in Sanhedrin. And if we don't have Shivim, now mind you, Shivim doesn't mean that it's 70 people who stand in for 70 Umas or anything like that. It means 70 points of view, which are reflected in 70 languages. And how do I know it's 70 points of view? Because the halacha is that if two Dayanim in Sanhedrin tell you the same point of view, you throw them out, they only count as one, and you take in somebody else. We can't have two people thinking the same way. That's crazy. So it's literally that same rule of thumb.
And make sure
Property
you
is
have
wrong.
Cohen Levi in there.
Isn't it?
Make sure you're Cohen Levi in there.
I think you have personal interests.
Absolutely. That still connects to this year.
That's true.
I think there's a Knesset Hakdolah that discusses whether in the places where the Rambam doesn't argue with the Rambam, whether it's considered to be two views or not. You would call it 2 days.
Beautiful. Very beautiful. That's very nice. Very nice indeed. A lot of profound issues in that one. So, might this have something to do with the problem that we have with Yavanit and the Shivim? Oh, there were Shivim. Well, that's how Tony set it up. That's weird. Might this have something to do with the fact that a dude be Yehosef,
Mitzrayim.
that's Mitzrayim,
It's
right?
already in Mitzrayim.
B'tzeiti al Eretz Mitzrayim, in Mitzrayim. So what happens? They're already giving Paro problems right at the beginning. You know, they say to him, I mean, that you can't make a Ivri and an Eved. No, it says Paro, this is in Rashi. No, it says Paro, Ginune Malchut ani makir. Well, in Keni, Bisaper, B'shivim Loshin is the Gemara said to say, right? So Paro says, all right, tomorrow we put him to the test. We'll see if he's Bisaper, B'shivim Loshin. And what happens? So Gavriel comes during the night, tries to teach him B'shivim Loshin. He's not successful. But then he adds the extra hay. Where'd that come from? Because the Musta Yukta Shalofi told him it was going to be on the Avnei Choshen. Of course, his name was going to be spelled with a hay. And he puts him back there on that moment and gives him that hay. And because of that hay of the shame, he ends up being able to speak the Shivim Loshen. Now, you think this is crazy, but there's an amazing Rabbeinu Bachya. The Rabbeinu Bachya says that when Yosef said hey lachem zera, it was that hey. We never find the word hey except in 3 places as a word hey. And each one of them is merames the hey b'shem, which was what was given to Yosef. And therefore, Yosef, now this is totally different from what we thought. One of the big achievements was that Yosef was the one who said Rida Eli instead of Reid Eli. From there, we see that he's using the hay again. That hay becomes afterwards the gift to Yaakov Avinu. Vanochi a'alche gam alo. What is the meaning of a'alche gam alo, the double lashon? So Chazal learned from there that the haftoch of l'chol Yisrael yesh lam chelik b'olam haba, and the fact that coming out of Mitzrayim, you will not only get back to where you were, you will be Yisrael, and there will be an extra aliyah to Elam Haba. Is that hey? It's there that we have the haftocha, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Yaakov Avinu, which he introduces himself once again with Ani Kel Shakai. And he says, I'm going down with you to Mitzrayim. Wow, okay, so now we have a haftacha, that the Shekhinah will be there, and that's the Shekhinah of the hay. But the other thing that Rabbi Yehuda says is exactly what we thought was making a fool of the whole story of Yosef. However, what he was really saying, says the Rabbi Yehuda, beyond the Kol Yisrael Yesh Lam Chevet V'Olam Haba, and beyond the idea of the promise that there will be an aliyah through the Shekhinah, he ha'hei ha'achrona sheb'shem, v'hi shepirnasa v'chilkela et kol eretz Mitzrayim in the last hay shanim of the Ra'ah. And Yosef was the one who set it up, so that the Heilachem Zera was the gift of Yosef's vision. V'chein Ramaz Yosef Devar Shamar Heilachem Zera. And that's the reason that he made it a Chamishit Leparo, because it was the Chamesh Shanim that was Mechukal Yedei Hashem, which is Meruba. And that's exactly what happens in the end, and that's what we have Vida Mitzrayim Al Hayam. And that's the Yad, that's Chamesh exposed, that we darshan in the Haggadah Shel Pesach. I mean, he's got this, the Yad Haggadah, and so on and so forth. He brings it by Yecheskel, the same thing. And that's why we have Chamesh Pamim Lo Achmol over there in Yecheskel. This goes on for pages about all the Ramazim of how to say of Yosef. But the important thing, of course, is that it was a setup of Yosef in terms of his own recognition that the last 5 years are an option of having a completely different shaykhs to the nature of Ra'av. And therefore, when he said, Heilachem Zerah, it was in response to Ve'aretz Lo Teisham. Ve'aretz Lo Teisham was an amazing, this was something we've gone through. I don't want to bother you a lot about it, but basically what Yosef achieved was a complete reversal of the selfish, in complete anochiyut, the egocentric involvement of the entitlement that the initial response was of Mitzrayim. Hey, we've been paying our taxes, give us food. To the whole country is being destroyed. Whatever it takes. I mean, we need to make it work again. It's just unbelievable. It was compared to Kennedy, right, with the ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, which is what he does gradually, Well, if you don't have money, what can you do to support the effort, Well, we have Mikna, we have trucks, we have this, it gradually changes the whole point of view in which not only they not feel it's an entitlement, but they're blessing him. They're saying, oh my God, what would we have done without you? You're amazing. We owe you everything. We're happy to be Avodim Laparo. Yes. And Nimtza Chen Beinecha. Nimtza Chen Beinecha? Whoa, what a reversal. So he literally makes everyone an expression of his own self and his relationship, what he wanted with Yisrael. And what he ended up doing for Paro was what he was doing for Yaakov, literally. Which means that these are universal ideas. The connectedness that we find in the Chaverut, the Kesher Nefesh, that goes through the Ummah Yisraelam with us is exactly the same thing. The Mispar B'nai Yisrael that are capable of the understanding of all of these Lashonos, if they are in terms of Yatziv Gvulot Amim, not Yatziv Amim, Gvulot Amim. What does that mean? Why the Gvulot of Amim? And how does it relate to the Gvulot Amim? It's just the Lashon Amim, right? Now, if this is how Moshe Rabbeinu is magdir it, then it means that the Yerusha of Eretz Yisrael, as Yisrael, is in itself part of that which causes the world to be set up with the Gvulot of the various nations. Not simply, it's another one of the Gvulot, except this is the one that's been given to Klal Yisrael. But it means that the way the earth is split up is in terms of the extent of the connection of the particular Amim to Yisrael. So that the Yatzeh Gvulot Amim themselves is Nogea Yerusha Sa'aretz, directly, which changes everything. Because what this means is we understand from the beginning of this, it's not Yosef who's created this rush. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu who's created the rush. When he's screaming at Yaakov, what is taking you so long? Why are you spending all this time in Sukkot? Maybe it's because that's when we bring Shivim Barim to the Yom HaSayil. All right, but why aren't you there? Why aren't you there yet? Yes. And the whole beginning of the story, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to get them down to Mitzrayim, you know? Oh, we'll take the child, we'll take the Egel down, and then the Parah will come after the Egel. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu setting all of this. Yaakov Avinu is the one who thinks that he's got this paradigmatic yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael, which of course runs against Padan Aram. Arami Ovinavi, Vayered Mitzrayim. There's nothing about Vayeshev in the middle. So when we get to the Shiva Nefesh and we trace it back to Arami Ovinavi, well, where do you expect that to lead you? Abai Mitzrayim, obviously. But that means that it was that relationship that was part of what needed to be achieved. The idea of yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael is a very nice concept in which, like a Pekida, it gives you, as we understood it, the Mishnah. It gives you the Gestalt. And that's Vayokem Yaakov Mishnato is be Mishnato. Yes, I understand. And that's, of course, everything that Yosef was being Isaac in here, and which why that becomes Chavilot Shal Mishnah, and the Gemara that describes what Yosef gives, and what is the Rav Tvot B'Koach Shor, those Chavilot of Mishnah. Fine. But that's all it can be. And it's Yosef, therefore, is telling Yaakov, every additional moment of being in Eretz Yisrael from the point of view of a yeshiva that has not achieved Gvulot Amim is lessening your kayach of the power of being morish others, because it is time to get to work. And at this point, everything becomes business. It's all about doing our jobs. And this was exactly what was resented the whole period. There shouldn't be jobs. We should have a chance to develop and so on and so forth. The struggling with these relationships is exactly what the Emach HaSheikh HaGadol and Nafel is about. Because what this means is that we are used to thinking, the Emach HaSheikh HaGadol is the idea of you gotta manage to live through it, you know? And if you live through it, so then you'll come out and you'll come out with good things. Tu Veretz Mitzrayim, Akeva Shel Esav, the Malchus and the Beis Hamikdash that comes out of the, speaking of love relationships, I mean, is there any more than Esther and Achashverosh, for God's sake? I mean, that's totally crazy. You're talking about the monstership of monsters, who is only going to be, is literally tamed. A mass rapist. He's a madman. She goes in there and tames him and turns him into a lover, which Vayehav, I mean, everybody's shocked. He wasn't supposed to fall in love. He ends up falling in love with her. I mean, this is mamish, and this, of course, the room is over here with the whole story of the Chamesh Chalifot Smalot and so on. These people know what they are doing, and they understand what is involved. And the painful nature of Hodah, ultimately, or on the part of Yosef, of accepting the Horah of Yaakov, there's a lot of tough, very tough moments in this parsha. What we take to be disappointments are not disappointments. They're just tough problems that need to be solved by the boxers, essentially. And that's exactly why Yaakov is showing this element of himself to Paro. Look, it's all very nice to talk about patriarchs who spend their whole life sitting and learning and becoming great Mikaras of Din and Din Rafi and Din Kasha and so on that, or become Mikaras of Pesach Einayim and all of the chesed of the Olam. That's not my job. My job is to be the boxer. So if you wonder why I have black eyes, it's because I've been through hell. That's why. This means that the Kel Shakai, which Yaakov himself invokes initially when he wakes up to what's happening, and he says to them, okay, in Kenefos says Yisrael, all of a sudden, then this is what we have to do. And what's left, as the Medrash says, so what more can I do? I'm going to give you my prayers. The El Shaddai, what is that? El Shaddai. Misha Amar Lo Olam Odai, Yomar Letzoroti Dai. Oh, I mean, if ever there was a disgusting feeling. I mean, come on, you know, what, your tzoros, no matter you have tzoros, what kind of business is that? Misha Amar Lo Olam Odai. I mean, let's keep a sense of proportion, no? So you see clearly, obviously Yaakov Avinu has a very finely honed sense of proportion, and he understands that that's exactly the nekuna. And because of that, Kel Shakai appears to him again on the way. The same Kel Shakai that was given to him by Yitzchak Avinu, the same Kel Shakai that is given to him by Yosef when Yosef's children come before him. The same Haftorah that was given to by Kel Shakai that is handed over by him to Bnei Yosef of Ephraim and Manasseh. The very same relationship that was so disturbing to everyone before. Is it shaykh that he would do it again? Yep. I was allowed to give a double portion to choose one of my sons who will be Goy v'Kalamim. I'm giving it to you. Maybe it's not such a good idea, Dad. No, I'm giving it to you. And I want everyone to realize that when they come home Shabbos, this is what they say to their kids. You should be like Yosef's kids. Yosef's kids. Which one? The ones that grew up when I wasn't here. The ones that weren't influenced by me. The ones that expressed the very things that you so resent. The youthfulness, the craziness, the madness that they become, the Egel Olumah that they become. You think Ben Yakir Li Ephraim, these jerks, that's the ones that they have to become like. That's the bracha that I'm giving you. Are you angry? Are you upset, gentlemen? Because that's what you're going to be saying every Friday night. Ho, 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 ho. So you're talking about tikkunim and changes? What does this have to do with Kel Shakai? Everything. Because remember that we are holding at the cusp of this immense change, of the end of the formation of a world which includes the Toldes HaAdam, of a world in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates the Gvulot. The beginning of the change of that world, a world that was defined by dying. When you say it's defined by die, it means that we allow for the chaotic development of something to reach a stage at which it's usable. At that moment, I say, die. We understand in the simplest terms that we live in a world of die, right? Because, I mean, basically, the little space in space-time that we take up is literally a die. We're at exactly the point of time where it is possible to have the type of life that has the type of intelligence and the complexity that we have. It couldn't have appeared much earlier because there weren't the materials, there weren't enough generations of star development to provide the types of materials that you need to make the little machines that we are. So you had to go through all of the original processes, the first stages of galactic development, the development of forces and so on, stars blowing up left and right, and now a second generation of stars that develop in which you've got enough dust around to gather together in these clouds in which, in which the little pieces join together, which, as the pasuk says, is the meaning of the formation of the earth, where the Regavim find one slight difference in gravity, and they start accreting to that gravitational center, which, says the Gemara, is the Evan Ashadim. It's the one tiny crystal. How the heck did they know that anything aggregated? What are you talking about? Which Regavim? I thought God created the world. If you're talking about Haba'im Yashresh Yaakov, you're talking about Shorashim. If you're talking about the languages that have begun it all, they're no longer with us, as the Rambam says. That Greek is no longer spoken, except in university, and that doesn't mean it's spoken. That means you can understand it, but it lacks that chiyus that the Greek originally had, obviously. That idea of Abaim Yashresh Yaakov means that the Yatsev Gvulot Amim cannot come from dealing with, it comes from understanding, in which case it comes from loving, in which case it comes from kesher amok, nafshi b'nafsho. Only from that is it possible to have language, and we know that from the story in Bereshit. All of the original naming were acts of love, as the Gemara says. As Rashi says, the discovery of La'adam Lo Matzah Ezer Kedek, in the most intimate sense, is a discovery of language. This, strangely enough, weirdly enough, is the introduction of the Rabbeinu Bachya, the Parshas Vayigash, of all weird things, to open Vayigash with a description of the centrality of language to the human condition. Yes, Vayihi Ha'adam Nefesh Chaya. Now this is Dibur. Davar Yadua Ki HaDibur Yesh Lo Koach Gadol. This is what makes everything evolve. Ikar Havayat Adam B'Shel Nefesh HaChaya Shi HaNefesh HaMedaberet V'Chem Tirgei Munkus L'Ruach Mamalala V'Al Ken Nikra Dibur Pri Borei Nif Svatayim, etc., etc., etc. So what in the world does this have to do with Vayigash? Really everything. This is the place of the development of our capability of bringing Shivim Korim, of being able to be Miyatzi, Gvulis. And the idea of Ema Chashecha Gedola and so on is not the question of managing to live through something. It's a relationship to the story that begins with the ending of El Shaddai with the giving over of Brit Milah by Kel Shakai, right? Anish Kel Shakai, which first is just reproduction, the prayer of and then becomes Yitalek Lefanai Ve'yitamim, which is the first stage of now you start getting involved in this development, right? We are now on the cusp of the switch between massive reproduction, which is the B'poru Vayishritzu Vayirbu Vayatzmu B'mod Ma'od, and the moment in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, look, it's a big change coming. Because I used to speak as El Shaddai, but I'm no longer that. Shmi Hashem lo nodati lehem, but that's what this is all about. So understanding the nature of that change is part of what's happening over here. Because what it means is that when Moshe Rabbeinu says in the same way, so why aren't we getting a move on? Why isn't anything changing? The response is, because to Kel Shakai, there is no particular meaning to Eretz Yisrael. Obviously there isn't. We're still at a stage in which there's no Yatsev Gvulot Amim, in which you're still developing, in which the earth is coming into being. That's what Kel Shakai is about. You aren't mature enough to know anything about the Shem Hashem to be able to understand what this relationship is involved. There would be no meaning to the gift of Eretz Yisrael to you as a species if there's no understanding in you of the differences between those Shemot. Do you understand this? Now, let us imagine, as we've been speaking about, the nature of the development of Yisrael as a universal phenomenon, which, of course, all universal phenomena are treated by those who don't have anything but a local awareness as local phenomena. So therefore, every individual, every infant goes through its own life, goes through the stages of its development, having no awareness that essentially it's going through the development of the world, just as it had no relationship as a fetus to the various stages of fetal development that to some extent will recapitulate the history of evolution and so on, as it's been recorded in their DNA. They have no connection to that. It's just, this is the way it happened. This is the way it is. The same thing happens when everybody thinks the story of their life is a unique story in which all of these things are happening to them and so on and so forth. And, I'll manage to get through it somehow. And only as they mature do they realize this is the story of life. It's not the story of me. It's the story of life. And the issues that are happening to me are making me discover what it means to be alive. So gradually you begin to understand the universality of what is happening around you. You first think that you live on the center of the universe and there's nothing else that's there. So a universal phenomena is a phenomenon that affects the whole little rock that you're on. Never occurs to you that maybe that itself is very local. And then you discover, oh my gosh, there may be a galaxy. You think the word galaxy is all that there is. It's amazing. It's the entire universe. Wow, it's big. And then you discover that is about the sweetest thing that you're talking about. It's lessons. Okay, so now you've got a larger sense of it. And you realize. Just this. Maybe there's infinite differences. And this is a minor Fine, that's there's only one. But the ultimate universal is in fact not the development of useless universes as Darwin keeps circling around doing absolutely nothing with a few simple solutions. But it's actually the story of not even the uniqueness of the development of intelligence and awareness and so on, but about the uniqueness of the stories that are entered into by those who learn to integrate the history and the possibilities, which we call the languages, which is the equivalent of the DNA in the terms of the biology, the DNA of the development of intelligence and awareness on their planet. And that becomes Yisrael. And that is the essence of Yisrael. And that is the meaning of Abba Im Yashresh Yaakov. In which case, the Yatsev Gvulot Amim Mispar B'nai Yisrael is the only thing that justifies giving the shoresh of a planet as part of the gift of the Bria itself. Because you are engaged in this, I give you the Klolai Shalom, Bichlal Yofi, Bichlal, as the Gemara says in Yuma, becomes Michlalo Shalom. You are the ones who have learned to appreciate it all, and you are the ones, obviously, Akeva Shalesav. That's a small part of it. But all of it can only be built on the type of relationship that you can manage and that you can evolve. That's an entirely different vision of how things develop and how things grow and what they're meant to be. And the truth is that it creates a tremendous demand of maturity and of work. And it's the first time that Avram Avinu is given an answer to Nimrod. Remember, Nimrod had that very, very wonderful question to Avram. if you have a better idea, how about sharing it? Either you are stupid and you don't understand where your diversity is going to take us and what type of wars are going to end up needing to be fought in order for somebody to survive. So, I mean, you think that this is all lovey-dovey? Is that what you think? Are you thinking in terms of hundreds of millions of casualties? Are you thinking in terms of billions of casualties? Mr. Chesed, is that what we're thinking about? How about if we decide that having something is better than having nothing? How about that? I also have a soft heart, Abe. I'd like to have a nice, beautiful world where everybody would be lovey-dovey, but I'm smart enough to know that it ain't going to be that way. When you speak to a Chinese person, they're very happy that they live in Nimrod Town. Very happy. Because the alternative would be to live in Europe. And they're not stupid enough to think that that has any future. Literally, they know. The alternative is to live in chaos, like everybody else is starting to live. We're very happy that we live in a country that tells us exactly what we can do and what we can't do. And when Muslims come around and blow up a bus station, they get killed. That's what we want to live in. So if it costs us a little bit of what you guys think is freedom, that's fine. There's absolutely nobody who's got any problems with that. And that's exactly what Nimrod says. There shouldn't be any problems. So if you have a better answer, tell it to me. And Avram never had a better answer until today. Until Yatsev Gulot Amim LeMispar B'nai Yisrael. Until the discoveries of Vayigash. Until it became possible to reach a stage in human development in which you can become an orev for the thing that you hate the most. In which your lover can be Achashverosh, if that's the case. In which Esav is not just a matter of taking and stealing something, but a matter of complete and total understanding. In which you go to Aram and you say, I am his brother. Ochivani Baramos means I don't think more than him. I understand him. Otherwise, you're an idiot, obviously. You can't say Ochivani Baramos is a child, yeshiva bacher who's been doing nothing his whole life and is going to now start competing with Lavan Arami. You got to be nuts. Unless you know that it's really true. That Ochivani Baramos, I'm his brother. This is an amazing thing. It's a whole different way of facing the world. If indeed it's possible to integrate everything ultimately in such a way that you contain all of it, then there is an answer to Nimrod, because this becomes the Shivim Lashem. As the Zohar puts it, the tremendous chiddush of that Vayavo Yisrael Mitzrayim Vayogor Yaakov Be'eretz Cham. What is the difference between those? Because the Yisrael coming to Mitzrayim is one thing, but the incorporation of Cham requires the work of the Baksa. One is Yisrael, one is Yaakov. The Rambam points out the same thing when HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, it says, Vayikra Elohim Yisrael, and then it says, Vayom Yaakov, Yaakov. What is that supposed to mean? But that's exactly this pasuk. Yavo Yisrael Mitzrayim, Vayogo Yaakov Beretz Cham. Says the Ramban. He doesn't compare it to the pasuk, but he says what this means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Yisrael, your job now is not to be this Sarita, which is your name. Your job now is to get down to the dirt and the politics and the interrelationship, and that's what you've got to do. So this is all unbelievable developments in which it's clear that we need to take. It's only Yefes. It's not only that we needed shame to come as Malki Tzedek and talk to Avram and hand over the future, which becomes the kahuna. It's indeed entirely this development of the chen, which was the chen of Noah, all of the aspects of Yavta Elokim Liyefet and the development of those three children, which then expanded into the entire parsha of the Shiva Moshaines. All of that finally starts to come together here, but only with the koach of the development of what takes place through this amazing parsha, a very painful maturation in which there are no resolutions, there's only work. The power plays of all of the people who were playing before all become secondary in their own minds, in which emotions are locked into existential realities. It's no longer a matter of the personal. And all of the things that people were choshesh before were personal. Look, says Yehuda, this is reality. Nafsho kshuran v'nafsho. It has nothing to do with whether I like it. It has nothing to do with whether I have absurd Darwinian emotions about jealousies about this. It's stupid. There is important work to be done. Now I'm telling you, which he says to Yosef, I have no time for this. And if it means destroying the country, I'll destroy the country. This is reality. And when you're standing in front of reality, as we spoke about Hanukkah, nobody has that power. But amazingly, that turns around and makes you the one who loves Binyamin by taking the place of Yaakov, in which that Gisha becomes the love that builds the Beis Hamikdash, and becomes David and Yonatan. It becomes the Yatzed Golot Amim. It becomes a response of Klal Yisrael. It becomes the nature of Bavel and the languages of Bavel and the ability of Esther to respond, an understanding of the role of language, a serious solution to the penafutz that he was so worried about. The pain of those 130 years really relates to the Kel Shakai Yomalet Tzarot die because I have enough. I tell you, I know I have enough. And he had enough. And that change that allowed him to live in Olam Hazeh as if it were Olam Haba comes from this amazing metamorphosis in which the local life was transformed into the nature of Haba in Yashresh Yaakov. This entire idea is the profound relationship between war and peace. And it's mamish a theme in Tolstoy as well, but it's a theme in David HaMelech, because David HaMelech puts it. Oh, you know, there's a beautiful song that brings this out and its relationship to Hanukkah. You must know Paul Robeson's song, right? Nobody knows the trouble I see. Nobody knows my sorrow. That's the Knesset of Yaakov to Yosef. Nobody, listen to how he ends it. He ends it with Hanukkah. Nobody knows the trouble I see. Glory, which is Hod. Hallelujah, which is Hallel. So, in other words, this type of development that allows a human being to come before Paro and for him to be shattered by the sense of the presence, this is an amazing moment. Listen to David HaMelech. Shir HaMa'alot El Hashem b'tzarat al-inkarati v'yadim. Hashem hatzila nafshi misfat sheker milashon r'viyah. Ma'yitein lecha, ma'yosif lecha l'rashon r'viyah. חיצי גיבור שנונים כחלי רתמים. אוי עלי, כי גרתי משך, שכנתי מועלי קידר, אוי עלי, says Rashi, אמר כנסת ישראל. כבר לקיתי בגלויות רבים, גרתי משך עם בני יפת, במלכוס פרס and Yefet, and so on the other Rishonim point out it's everybody, including Shmuel, and this refers to the Bedouins and so on. Fine. Rabat shachnala nafshi im sonei shalom. I am sick and tired of living with people who hate peace. Ani shalom, what I'm working on is bringing it all together. V'chiadaber, and I talk, himala milchama, all they want to do is fight. Which is this tremendous interrelationship in which the way to Shalom is goof, as you said, it's the way of understanding. It's not really the way of fighting. I'm not interested in Milchama because the achievement of Yisrael shouldn't require Milchama. And yet they keep fighting. What's it going to take to keep them down? My gosh, how much more do we need to develop in order to be able to show that difference between Yisrael and Ahab? So this level of maturity is really the only way in which it's possible to deal with the aspects of Yava. Because so long as a person actually has any sense of an agenda, that agenda is minus. That minus is served perfectly by Yava. It's the amazingly wonderful humanistic language, which means that nothing has to necessarily mean anything other than what it is that I supply as its meaning. The thought that there is a universal sense of development and that the local human is a very small part of that is the furthest thing that is really imaginable for Minus. I need to control that reality. So I heard a beautiful word from this Rebbetzin Yemima. So Grizzy, Rabbosha said Grizzy came back, and I didn't tell me who she quoted it from, but that the problem with the Targum Hashirim is that a ness had to take place for them all to say the same thing. If they all said the same thing, then it wasn't a Targum Hashivim, it was a Targum Hashivim. So there was no longer any development that was possible in that, because instead of being able to be Megala, the Shivim Panim Latera, which it should have been, instead became, as the Medrash says, a lion in a zoo. A lion in a zoo is not a lion. And therefore, all that the Umay saw of Torah was the Torah without any gestalt of what it is to be Torah at
They were
all.
separate, they couldn't see each other. That's part of it. Each one is in his own cell. The whole point of Sanhedrin is to be able to interchange. It's
Beautiful, beautiful word. Beautiful word. And look, again, obviously there's no way to rush such a thing, but the seriousness of the experience of the reality of our work. And it's so, listen, I mean, you don't have to look very far to see how difficult it is to do this, because what you have is people that are frightened. Instead of the questions of Klal Yisrael facing the Umay Sa'ilam and absorbing, which is exactly this crisis that you had with Yosef, which is facing the Yetzer Hara and absorbing exactly the same thing. We can't deal with your craziness. We can't deal with your beautiful hair and your beautiful clothes and your intimacies, and so we can't deal with it. But that's exactly what the relationship with the Ummah Sa'ilam is. Those Ummas, each one of them is providing a very particular aspect of relationship that Yisrael is not capable of on its own. Because the idea of the purity of the underlying reality of the Shorashim of life on earth don't allow for the investment on that level of belief in the local. If you want to develop the perfect grape and the perfect wine, you have to believe in the local. You have to be willing to give your life to it. And that's the Lo Nivra Olam Ela B'Shvil Rishig and Area Tzaddik. Olam Hazeh requires you to have no other concerns. That's the meaning of Rashid Gemiri, leading it. Doesn't mean being bad. That's Oil Rasha Tov, as the Gemara says. I mean, tremendously Tov Labrios involved in settling the earth. But it has to be real to you. The moment that it's your understanding of its place in things, you destroy them. I can't live like that. I need to live as if it matters more than anything else in the world. I can't have somebody taking that and making it part of something that is so much bigger that it makes me feel insignificant. I hate that. I hate the insignificance that a Ben Yisrael makes them feel. Because it doesn't matter how much you appreciate it, since they can only appreciate this particular element and that particular element, and don't share that aspect of Tzchias, it's a tremendous threat. And you have no idea that you're threatening to them. But the same thing happens on the other side. The idea that terror was meant to be a religiously purified way of thinking about things, which is what originally was Chosser in the Hira of Yehuda. The Hira of Yehuda was only Shaykh when he was with Yosef. And it was because of that that he needed that tikkun of Mishra. The fear of Yetzer gives the kayak to Yetzer, as everybody knows. The more you attempt to repress Yetzer, the worse it is, obviously. The entire question of the interrelationship that a person has with the Umes, with everything that the Umes have achieved, is giving them the greatest, as Zara says, that's the greatest gift. So then why is it that the Purim get less and less? Because the Umes are going to end up disappearing. So that's not very nice. But says the Zara, it's the biggest gift that you can give them. Because in recognizing that and providing for a place in it for Nitzchias is you're addressing that for them. The fact that maybe it's difficult to accept that leads to anti-Semitism and resentment and so on. But that's part of what the love relationship is meant to achieve. Instead, what you have is Jews walking around with both. We hate everybody, but we also hate the Yetzer Hara, in which case we hate the Torah, in which case we hate ourselves, and the entire thing is without any capability of developing the profound and natural relationship. It's the most natural relationship of all, the Nafshon, Shura B'Nafshon, because it's a relationship of the love of existence instead of the love of persona. And that's why Yehuda was capable of achieving. And that's why it was so difficult for Yosef. It was an amazing, amazing way of recognizing the real Avodah of Yisrael and the things that you should be doing. This is not esoteric issues. How indeed do you experience a movie? How do you experience those are tremendous input from the Umas Hayom, right? You've got tens of thousands of the most brilliant technicians, thinkers, and so on. They're putting together something which is expressive of a cultural vision. And you're talking about Ma Betza, it's all about Ma Betza. Because the bottom line is the cash, which means it has to be successful. So that the amount of work and thought and involvement that's put into it is unbelievable. How do you experience that? So, and that itself, if something like that is not entirely a natural response in which every last aspect of it is your experience of Torah, not by some kind of silly, this is like that, but as if you're experiencing literally the mishalim and the depth of the midrashim that are involved in what the human condition is. And if it's anything less than that, it isn't Yatzei Gvulot. But the most natural thing in the world is that it is that. And nobody realizes it. So coming in the time that we live, which these are the challenges, and people know that these are the challenges, in the same way that this parsha describes the falling apart of artificial paradigms. That's exactly the time that we're living in. It's falling apart. So that sense of disappointment, that's everybody's disappointment in every type of cult. Cult, they don't call them cults, but obviously cults, religious cults, wrong ideas about how it is that we relate to the world, in which everything becomes, there's no real Yivdilanu Mina Ami. There's no Asher Nasam Lanu Teras Emes. There's no Chayel Matan B'tochenu. And because of that, there's doubts about the Shaykh's Eretz Yisrael as well, and the ability to be Morish, which is Asila Soto Mitzudah She'em Bodagim. Mitzudah She'em Bodagim, Mitzudah She'em Bodagan, because it doesn't have any Skoskia in and of itself. It's child's play, but it's lovely child's play. And the Ephraim Menashe element of us is meant for us to appreciate that child's play. Michelangelo is child's play. It's better quality drawing than they do in kindergarten. Much, 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 much better. And it will take you 50 years to be able to do the first stroke. But so what? It's child's play. It's just a very old child that's been playing at that game. What exactly does it mean? In it being able to duplicate elements and bring out other, what does it mean? To Yisrael, it means an amazing expression of what this earth is capable of the self-awareness, of the integration and so on. But what does it really mean to the child? It's play, which is great, because all learning and all development is play, but where does it connect to when you're no longer here? So it doesn't matter what's going on. Either it's mechuber to that nitzchias, which is the Yashresh Yaakov, which becomes the Yatzitzu for Hak Yisrael, which is the Malay, the entire Aretz, with production, with seriousness. Or in the end, it's not self-sustaining because it doesn't have the ruach that can sustain it. It has only the kina that can destroy it, which is what we're watching. We're seeing it fall apart. In which the very moment that you achieve the things that you dream up, you stop caring about them and lose them. And all the most unbelievable visions are left careless, lifeless, meaninglessness. And these are things that in Yisrael don't happen as long as you have that secret of Vayigash Yaakov. So that type of maturity and that type of work, it's cut out for you. And all of us, by nature, by human nature, we find it very difficult. So of course we get involved in our own ideas. We get involved in, what can I do for number one? And it's always, obviously in terms of L'Shem Shamayim and for Akka, but it's always really about number one and the local planet and the local life. And then you get to mistake your own Beit HaKnesset, your own whatever silliness is something ultimately meaningful. And even in your own Sholem to gefilte Fisher. And this is crazy. Totally crazy. There's no limit to the smallness that it's possible to reach, and to the grandeur that mi baz liom ketanot is capable of taking the smallest things and making them into unbelievable things. And everybody is capable of that. And I think that this parsha is mechayev that it's a lot of business and it's very tough. And to be that boxer isn't only Rocky, it's Yaakov Avinu too. And there's a lot of blows and there's a lot of tzaras, but it goes far beyond the steps of Kel Shakai that cause an end to those tzaras. And that give us a ruach that can take us literally to the boring ruach Shamashiach, which was that original ruach, the ruach Elokim Merachef al Pnei Hamayim, specifically, which is a ruach Shamashiach, as Chazal tell us, and which there's no question, we feel change. We feel profound change in the air. Things are changing. Culture is changing. Geopolitics is changing. There's tremendous changes. We don't need...
Winds of change.
Yeah, winds of change. Winds of change and winds of war. And that idea of war and peace is a fundamental interrelationship between them. That the way ultimately to win wars is surprisingly through this level of understanding and developing the achim anachim in understanding where we're going. And that's really true. That is the way to win, is understanding the enemy and outdoing the enemy and utilizing whatever it is that the enemy has achieved in order to absorb them, to be mavatal, whatever that chaos is. And they know it too. I had an experience that was absolutely astonishing experience. I had no idea where it was coming from. This was like, in 1968. So my daughter had been born in Canada, and I needed to get something for the American Council. Their passport renewal, it was passport. And I'm just like a gentle guy, and I just go in there, and they're supposed to meet with the council for a moment, supposed to stamp you, and as you're waiting out there in the waiting room, they call you in, and then, I give them the document to be stamped. I was so utterly shocked. And I said nothing, good morning, here's the passport. And the guy, all of a sudden, he's about to take the thing and stamp it. And he looks up at me and he says, "What gives you the right to sit there and making me feel like my entire life is worthless?" What? Whoa, what? this guy's having an attack, a psychotic attack, you know. Mamish, it was just nothing. It was just being a Ben Yisrael. It was terrifying to me. It was amazing. I still can't understand it. I'm telling you, after all these years, I have not been able to figure out what possibly could have elicited that kind of reaction. Okay, but this is Vayigash Yashresh Yaakov on some level. And this is the challenge to us. But it's tough, and it's mature, and it's time to get to work. So I wish you all a good night, and we'll meet again with a lot more. Hashem, why that talk, everybody? I don't know. What more can I do?
Maybe so there's no response to the hatred.
Right?
There's no response.
Of course there are. Hema will come out, but it's always on Ila Shalom, a very deep way.
But does it ever get rid of the hatred? Can it get rid of the hatred?
Can it get rid of the hatred? It did. And the fact is that it did in these most astonishing circumstances. Right? But it means that it can only do so by people who have learned not only to understand, but to actually love and care about. That's very
All the attacks on the temple.
And it's
profoundly difficult. I mean, so that's what it says. If the humans would only know how much I do for service, and actually, what the Rabbanis mean, and they, So they think that the fact that Eretz Yisrael is the only place, like the Gemara says, it only rains in Eretz Yisrael. Every place else just has the dregs, it's the promises. They take that as insulting. But Lamai said this is everything that the world is given. That's the answer to Lotamim. If there's something that makes this earth sustainable, then be happy to be part of it, for heaven's sakes. What is it? What do you care? You have everything that you want. And anything that you don't even realize that you need. And you're sitting out here bitching all the way, fighting with it, trying. I mean, what's wrong with you guys? That's beautiful marriage. If they knew what it was worth for them, they'd be putting armies around the business to protect it. It's a complete loss of any sense of what they are. But okay, that's our concern. There's a tremendous amount of hate, tremendous amount of milchama, tremendous amount of fear, tremendous amount of kida, tremendous amount of trying to be like them in order to. That creates kida. That's true. But a darga of Yisrael, which they would feel this concern for the earth, that's not. I think it would certainly be as powerful as it is in this fashion. But it's a very difficult job. It's very difficult to take the things that you naturally feel that are completely self-involved and make them into something that is so much more real. It's hard, very, very hard. We actually take the easy way out whenever we can. Then we step. Once you know what you're involved in, then any little step becomes very real for you. It's not like, okay, I'll take a little break from the fun and do a mitzvah or something. It's like it's all work, but it's all fun. It's a tremendous. It's that kind of work. It's the work of growth and productivity and power, and it's amazing. It's a tremendous amount of fun. Not the fun of self-involvement, which isn't really fun. People think that's fun, but I don't think so for long. Yeah.
Shlomo and Shimon ben Gera. You have the Melech Yehuda, you have his Rebbe, Big Shimon ben Gera, again, the adversarial part, and once he's gone, Shlomo's gone. Should this also be part of the whole picture?
Too much for me. I have to think about it.
Did Rebbe see the article on making Phelps Roper?
What I did see the article is what Barnea said, which is very important. Sorry, I forgot the whole piece. It's a very different piece. I mean, what Yosef was saying is that this is an international emergency. Because if, in fact, the country breaks down, you're not going to put it together again. If if we can't get things growing soon, this Mamish yesterday, where was that article on around yesterday? That's unbelievable, like right after the show, it always happens that way. So I have this amazing article on Iran that the country is being destroyed by a 7-year drought.
And so a fifth of the country is now no longer able to grow crops. It's one
But the
fifth.
problem is it will never be able to grow.
Right.
It's destroyed.
No, it's just that it's 1/5 in terms
Oh,
of
1/5.
years.
That's amazing. So this is through desperation, destruction of all the aquifers. They haven't had any rain. They're no longer capable of investing in anything because there's no future. That's an amazing thing to see that this happened. Iran was like one of the most unbelievably productive and rich and fertile. Entire vast river systems have become completely dry salt beds. It's amazing, the pictures are great to see. And if it wouldn't be Iran, it would really be sad.
If there's no question, you can turn to us, we could turn to
Either I was
It's really true, of course.
No
This all
question.
started when they decided to make their truck with us.
Yeah.
Talk about the rains being leftovers from Eretz Yisrael.
Unbelievable. What an amazing thing. But then the other point that Rabbaneo showed was that at around this time, a little bit later, 500 years later, but around the time of Yosef, there was in fact a 7-year drought. And the implication of it was such that it destroyed complete countries, complete empires. So there's actual letters begging Mitzrayim to send boats to save them.
without delay.
Without
Without
delay,
delay.
without delay. Maher al tamod, exactly the lesson over here. And they couldn't, they didn't have. And it's mamish the discussions between the Chitim and Mitzrayim, I mean, exactly the issues that are talked about over here. So part of what Yosef was saying is that this really is, we can't go on for 7 years. Od chamesh shanim she'ein. What you're doing, staying there, is you're making that happen. That's the penalty varnish. I won't be able to send you anything. We won't be able to do anything. You know what the type of desertification that's going to happen if this goes on? It can't go on. And since the whole point of it, just as Avram Avinu understood, that the need to leave Eretz Yisrael, to be a Zoycha to Eretz Yisrael, meant the same coming down to Mitzrayim because of Ra'av and the development of Malchus, the only answer is for you to come here. And that became the Chamesh Shanim, that he was sending that Halach and Zerah. He sent the same hay to Yaakov. And Yaakov was the only one who understood it. Everybody else, the guy's a nut, come down. He's like, oh my God, it must really be us. Who else would understand? That's why it goes together with the Agalot. So then that would be the portion of meaning of the Pasuk, which is another astounding accomplishment that he has. This level of relationship to Yaakov Avinu. So what we thought was like a joke on him was the most profound part of what he understood. It isn't a matter of food anymore. And he got the people to understand that. It's not a matter of having enough to eat. I can keep you going, but what are you going to do afterwards? You think the country's going to come back to life? Is that what you think? After we've destroyed the aquifers? After the earth has gone to salt? After the desert has moved in? Is that what you think? We're going to get it back to life? And that's what they say. The Aretz Lo Teishan, please give us seeds. Forget about the food. And they say that first. Give us seeds. As if we're more worried about throwing things into the ground than into our stomachs. Melanu Zera. It's unbelievable.
Did you ever see that it's an Israeli company that's building and operating this huge, massive desalination plant in California?
Yeah, sure. No, it's incredible.
There's also a huge amount of Israeli activity in Africa.
Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy. And then the Technion that just opened in China. 5,000 people coming to the opening ceremony. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, also Texas A&M, I say, is building a
Yeah,
massive
Texas A&M,
campus here.
massive
Oh,
campus.
that's
Texas
Right.
A&M.
You probably see like
They're
everything
massive,
happening in front of your
they're
eyes.
investing a huge, like $100 million or something to build a school here.
Marine biology.
Yeah, marine biology, yeah.
They are the best in marine archaeology. They would have a map, or that's where I would turn to get a map for tomorrow's year.
Wow, we have roboticists who did marine robotics.
John Manziel.
Wow. What an unbelievable thing.
There's famine in your house, we will all die of hunger. If you do not quickly arrive here, we ourselves will die of hunger. You will not see a living soul from your land.
It's from a letter from the
From king to Jack. One little kid, others.
Yeah, it's really wild. The historical elements, things are coming together and changing. It's unimaginable. And it's all in terms of Shorashim. That's the concept of Shorashim. That's what, there's nothing you can do more than Shorashim. That's all elements that we spoke about before, of Gestalt, of Mishnah. What can you do more than this? It just takes so much time to get the basic data that you know to be able to grow and mature. It's like, that's why there was that response by Kadosh Baruch Hu emotion. I was so angry. Now, you need to have it now. So fine, so stay now. I thought there, fine, stay here. It's like, no, what's the matter with you? If you understand where we're going, there is no now. It can't be now. It's like such an amazing open-ended world, which is open-ended because of a hay. That's the original hay. That's open on the bottom, exactly for that reason. That it enables this hay in the end of the Shuvah and Haidah. That Yehuda is so involved in here, which becomes that Malchus and Mashiach. It's crazy.
Yeah, I was just thinking how amazing it is with the water that we're exporting this technology.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, everyone else here is too young, but when I was here 6 years ago, I remember I'd be in the mikveh, no fight low, and there are signs on the wall with showing cracked earth and kol tipa chashuvah, and here we are. We have not only we have an excess of water, we're exporting our technology around the world. It's like it's unreal.
The changes that's like that.
You realize like 30% of the water that we use in industrial applications is desalinated water.
Yeah.
We're also the world's leaders in gray water.
Yeah, exactly.
Wastewater.
Recycling water.
Leaders, you understand what leaders mean? We use 86% of the water. The nearest country to us uses 13%. The United States uses 8%. Everything is wasted. You understand what a world leader means? It's like a different order of magnitude.
Didn't you take over for desalination?
Oh, you and your silly article.
That would be a
I yelled at you the first time. You just still at it.
But the chachma of seeing that you can revive it, because the way it's done is that the sewage water is put in touch with the aquifer and gradually purifies it to even bring it back to drinking level, but we only use it for irrigation. Just the willingness to see how things are.
Okay, so. Oh, no. At 11:15?
Just one.
And your food is waiting? And you're hungry and about to collapse? I can see how hungry you are. It's written all over your face. You barely have the energy to type. Okay.
You have to go through the grill first.
Yeah.
The elements of whatever you just mentioned now, the struggle that all you can really do is put in place the church and be involved in the mission and I mean,
But that mission is amazing, because that mission is called Terakula, it's called Ilam.
I understand.
Yeah.
But
That mission is all of Rome, that mission is all of Greece.
But that's essentially the Yosef approach, and in other words, Yuda seems like to have come from nowhere in that. And I think my main
No, I'm saying that's the willingness to be dependent on the Mephibosheth, is to do the dirty work and then to check it with Mephibosheth, Yafet. That's the Yafedanti, the Yafet, which the very Kabbalah of the need for Irah, which is so difficult for Yosef. That's why he recited.
How so isn't there supposed to be involvement, like you're supposed to want to be able to deal with who's have to be able to come tomorrow, and for Tikkun comes around for like to be submitted, not
But it's not your ASIC, that's in Yanim of Kitzi.
You can't.
That's the shvua that HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes us swear. And it's the same shvua about love. You're going to Bava, invest in Bava. Build cities, plant vineyards, care about the people. Be dorish the shalom of where you're going. Don't be Oilo B'chomah. Don't be Megala Sater. Don't rush the case. Don't sit and think about the case. All these crazy things that we have to promise. That's exactly what's going on over here with the idea of Yosef's investments too.
Not being the Gala Soda to Torah is actually caring for them.
Yeah, of course, that's what I'm saying. It's actually caring for
I
them.
don't understand that.
It's tremendously destructive to them. And that's the ahava achitachpas, that ultimate love has to have its moment. That can't be rushed.
That's even in terms of learning, of not being dorish to things that you're not ready yet to understand. That
Yeah.
you're
The
going
Muslim
to-
Michal Tidrash, exactly, it's the same thing. Even though it's all love,
Right.
and that goes all the way back to the tikkun of Nadav Avihu, and the reason that they're on the Kisei Shel Shlomo, and why they become Pinchas. Pinchas is Neitel, and Nefesh, and Nadav Avihu. They're all deeply related to this because the Nadav Avihu desire to get there and to see things, understand it, and it should be Ava before it's actually is part of the Lo Yachol Litapek.
That's fixed by way
Right.
That's the Baal Nefesh Ata.
Right.
Which is good for the
Sim
Nefesh.
sakin below echa in Baal Nefesh Ata. You know what that means?
It's the pain.
You take a knife and you put it in your mouth. So if you try to swallow,
That was Mickey.
Mickey did that?
No, remember there was that guy that punched him and then he spit out of both sides of his mouth because the guy had nails and his gloves on both sides and smashed him. He was explaining to Rocky all the horrible things that happened.
horrible things that happened. The Santa Sakin below echa. And that's Mishnah. אם ראית תלמיד שמשנתו קשה עליו, שתלמודו קשה עליו כברזל, מפני משנתו, so one of the things that we said with it, that if im yodea talmid barabo, that he's able to teach him properly, so then sha'al. V'im lav, im bal nefesh ata v'samta sakin below echa, and shut up. You know, v'im bal nefesh ata, find a new Rav. That's the closing. Anyway, yeah.
One question, if it's not too late.
No. Love solves all.
How do you maintain that gestalt and not let it get lost in ideas and take a gestalt and turn it into
It's too much fun to get lost in ideas. It really is. You feel something is wrong when it gets lost. That's what's wrong with the Yavana thing. You immediately know that you're in the presence of Yavana. It's all very beautiful and very wonderful, and it's all like very sophisticated, and it's all very human, and it all stinks to high hell from arrogance and self-involvement and an inability to really invest. It's just, it starts to be something you can't tolerate.
So what's a real investment?
What is a real investment?
Yeah, in terms of not making an idea.
Real investment is always putting in your heart into something that you know is right, but you don't know where it's going to lead to. Those are always the things that evolve and when they're so surprising. Those become the bunyam that develop when I'm not here. That's exactly what Yaakov is saying. You attempt to control it, so then it's not enough of an investment. And all the big companies know this also. All the biggest development were by companies that put so much into research that they would not tell you what to do your work on. We just weren't you working, and that's how Bell Laboratories got.
Google
Yeah,
20% of your time.
it's amazing. All of
must
the
find your own
successful
stuff.
companies all understood that you cannot attempt to have a vision that you think is really the whole thing. Because if it does, you're gonna run out very quickly. There's no way that you really understand where things are going. And every country that tried to do that ended up losing out in the end because somebody else got ahead on something and they were never able to catch up. שמחה, אתה רוצה לבוא לשיעור?
יש עוד כמה שעות.
אז אתה בשיעור, אתה רוצה להגיע?
It's not for this.
Okay, what do you need?